Hello everybody, I'm Jeff Byers, your instructor for ANI 150 Module 2, and we are going to show you how to take a current asset and repurpose it / kit bash, and some of you may not know that terminology, kit bash. Basically that was done back in Star Wars when they were actually creating models, like the Death Star, actually physically creating, no CG. There was a time where there wasn't CG, they didn't have CG available, and back when they created the first Star Wars movie, they actually had to create models, physical models, and they called it kit bashing. That means they took a bunch of parts from models and they put it all together to create a model of something that makes sense, right? So you have all these little parts and you put them all together and you actually build something that makes sense. And that's how the Death Star and most of those science fiction models were created. So in CG now, we've kind of done the same thing where we want to take pieces from other models, separate them out, and create a whole new model. Well, we're not going to go too extreme with this. We're going to keep it very simple because you guys are still learning, but I'm going to show you some really cool techniques to take this, instead of rebuilding everything from scratch, we're going to take this and we're going to make it smaller. So we're going to make a smaller crate from this larger crate. Now a lot of you think, well, gosh, all I need to do is take this side over here and move it over. Well, what if we don't want it to look exactly like that? How about if we want to, that would work if we wanted all these bands and stuff. What if we just want to create without the bands? Well, another thing is, even if I did move these in, then I'd have to go in and add all the edge loops and all that stuff. We still have to do work, but it's not going to be near as much work as if we were to go and remodel this whole thing. Okay? Alright, so there's our low poly. This is kind of where we left it at. We have that in a layer. I'm going to turn that off. We have our high poly crate in a layer, okay, which we've, sent out and did all that funky stuff in Mudbox, adding some really cool detail to it. We'll turn that off. The model I want to open up is, you guessed it, the medium level. This is the one with all of the edge loops, and this is the one I ask you guys to save. Hopefully you saved that one, okay? Because now we're able to go in there and make changes to this without causing too much damage to the model. So let me show you some things that we can do. So let's say I want to have a crate. I don't want to have these middle bracing bars, okay? So I don't need a middle bracing bars. Let's say we just need a middle one. We want the two outside ones out, okay? That's easy to do. So what we can do is we can go into this model, and let's go and select the model and just go to faces. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and marquee select this end over here, like that, okay? And you see how I marquee select it, right? Okay, I marquee select it. Now to deselect from a marquee selection, I can hold down the control key. If I hold down the control key, you can see right next to my mouse is a negative sign. I'm going to go ahead and drag a marquee just over this edge. I'm going to do the same thing over here, just over this edge. Okay? So when I look at the selection now, you can see that I've just got these parts selected. Okay? Alright. So what I'm going to do now is basically I'm just going to go ahead and delete that section. Okay, so we got that done, right? And let's go ahead and over on this side, okay, I'm going to go on this side, and we're going to basically delete this section. Okay, Go to faces, and we'll go ahead and select that section there, and hold down the control key and deselect that one, and deselect that one, and you can go in here and you can hit the delete key. Okay, pretty simple. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is, to make this easy on us, okay, we're probably going to just do one side and duplicate it over, right? I mean, that makes sense. So normally what we want to do is we always want, if we're facing the Z, we want to go ahead and delete this side of the crate. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to highlight this and deselect it. Now all we're going to do is we're going to focus on this part right here. Okay. So from the top view, I can hit the space bar and go wherever I want to in my viewports. Remember, just hitting the space bar. Excuse me. Yeah. And as I'm doing that, you can see I can go into the top view. Now, if you get kind of lost, you can go over here to the tool section, into the view panel, layout, and click on this one here, and you can just hover over here and hit the space bar, and that'll go over to the top, okay, if you get stuck. Alright, so I'm going to right click over the object and go to vertex. I'm going to select the vertices, right, and I'm going to click on the grid snap. Okay, I can also hold the V key down for grid snap. Okay, now for some reason it wants to snap to these little guys here, which is fine. That would be even better. But the thing is that we want to keep that nice distance that you see here, okay, for both of these. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hold down, or just click on the grid snap, and then snap that over here like this. And then I'm going to take these guys, Marquee Select these guys, and grid snap them together this way. Okay, there we go. So now when you look at this, they are now snapped together, and I'm using the grid to do that. Okay, all right, that's really cool. All right, now we don't want to do one by one. Now normally I'm going to show you something pretty cool though, that let's just say this vertex here, I would like to snap this particular vertex to this side. But we've got so many of them, we wouldn't really want to do that way. But if you wanted to, I hit the space bar. If you wanted to, you could just go in here and hold the V key down and snap this guy to that guy. Just like that. Okay? See how I did that? And you can do that. I wouldn't want to do this for a lot of vertices, but I've done that before. I've had no other way to go. But that's how you can snap vertices together. So, and it'll snap right on top. They're kind of magnetic. Now be careful though, because I know I'm going to go to straight across. I'm going to use the arrow key. So I'm going to, the arrow. So I'm going to hold down the V key and click on that arrow and move it over. Okay. So you could do that for several, and you can continue doing that if you wanted to all the way around, holding down the V key and doing that. Okay, but there's an easier way for multiple ones, and that's the way I showed you, where you're going to go in there and you're going to go in and click on the grid snap. As long as you have a grid there, we have a grid line that just happens to be right there, which works really well for us. We can go in here and click on grid snap and snap it. Okay, so they're on top of each other. Now as long as vertices are on top of each other, if you can see here, I got my display up. So to get the display, if you don't see this display up in your screen, you can go to Windows. You can go to let's see, heads up display. Where are you? Windows. That's not what I want. Display, heads up display, and we're going to go to polygon count. Okay, so the display, heads up display, polygon count, make sure that is check marked. Okay, and then if you go out like this, and you can go up to the center here, looks like we're right here. Okay, so if I marquee select one of these guys here, it should say that I've got two vertices selected. And that's not really good. These are still two separate objects. Or excuse me, it's still one single object, but there's two separate vertices, and they need to be welded together. Okay? Alright? Now the reason for that is that sometimes, even though there's two objects, if you hit the 3 key, you might see some issues with that that edge, okay? Because the vertices are not, yeah. So you can see that little gap there, okay? Now that gap wouldn't show up. It's hard to see until you turn off the wireframe on shaded. See, wireframe on shaded kind of disguises it. So I'm going to turn it off up here. You can see up here where my marquee is. Click on that, and it turns off my wireframe on shaded. So what's happening now is I've got to get rid of that little edge there. Okay. So what I want to do is right click over it, go to vertex mode, take click off anywhere, and go to, let's say, the side view. Okay. And I'm going to marquee select all these vertices. Okay, because I don't want to weld all of these separately. I want to weld them all together. I'm going to show you how to do that with a new tool. So to weld vertices that are on top of each other, hold down the space bar, okay, and I'm going to get this set up for show modeling only. There we go. And you can also go up here to go to mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools, and these are the same tools that you're seeing here. So I'm going to go to mesh tools, excuse me, edit mesh. So edit mesh, and we're going to go to merge. Okay, so it's under components. Okay, I'll take you through there again. So we got, hold down the space bar, go to edit mesh, and go to merge. Okay, merge an option box. When you do that, then you can go in here and you can set up the threshold. Okay, we're going to set up the threshold for this. All right. Okay, so now we're going to set up the threshold, and we are going to set it up at, it looks like 0.01 will work just fine. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and give you an idea how this all works. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into some vertices that are close together. So what it's going to do is it's looking at all those vertices, and it sees all the vertices, and the threshold is how close those vertices are together. Now if I go too high, if I go to like 1, that's way too high, click on merge, it merges everything together into one vertex, which is not what we want. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z that back, and you can see that if I go back into my edit mesh and merge, that if I type in 0.1 now and click merge, that it still does it. It's because our model is so small. Okay, let's go back. Alright, let's go one more time, and this time we're going to go pretty high with this. So edit mesh, and we're going to go to merge, and this time I already know what it needs to be. It's going to be 001. Okay, 0.001, and merge. Okay, now we still have issues with that. It did okay, but those little areas that are really close together, it's a problem. Okay, now we're going to go down even farther. So it's going to this and type one more 0 in. So 0.0001 and click merge. And there we go. Now it merged all of the vertices together. Now what I'm going to do is look at this now. And if I hit the wireframe, you can see that I just got one selected. I'll go ahead and do that again with the 5 key and just kind of marquee select that one little part. And you can see that there's one. Okay, it's just one showing. You can see right here. Alright, so 4 is wireframe and 5 is solid shade. So you can see that I've got all those. And now if I go in here, okay, and I click off somewhere, if I click on it and go 3 key, if I hit the 3 key to smooth it, notice I don't have that line anymore. It's because all those vertices have been welded together properly. Okay. Alright, so that looks good. Alright, so now we're going to make the box a little bit smaller because it's way too big. it would be just the same size as the crate, because we want to make a box now, just a regular box. So what I'm going to do now is there's a couple things I can do. I can go in here and just take away some of these, every other one. So the edges, just double click on that edge, double click on that edge, and double click on this edge, and we will do a control delete. Here we go. And from the top view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and go to vertex mode, click off, and I'm going to take this and see that distance between this edge and this edge. Hit the W key. I'm going to move that in. I'm going to turn off the grid snap. The grid snap doesn't help us now. We'll turn that off up there underneath the main menu bar, and I'm going to move that like this. Now I'm going to hit the 1 key again, because I noticed that it's moving my vertices kind of funny, so hit the 1 key again. And then I'm going to select this group and move it in and kind of I'm just eyeballing just the distance, keep it nice and about the same distance like that. There we go. Perfect. That looks great. And you can see that we're almost finished, believe it or not. Okay. So we're going to have a smaller crate, and we're not going to have that little detail on the side. So it's going to look different. And you can even do that to this too as well. Let's say that you didn't want that middle piece. Okay. That's easy to get rid of. Let's say if you just wanted a box with that middle piece, you could do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take that out of there. So I'm going to go to the front view, go to face mode, just select this piece right here, and easily hold down the control key and deselect that piece. You're getting better and better. The more you use Maya, the easier it is. I'm going to go, and you might want to practice just hitting the space bar, going from one viewport to another. Okay. I have to model in all 4 viewports. It's impossible for me to model without those 4 viewports, because it's just impossible to line things up properly. So getting out of the perspective view, basically going into perspective view only to see the 3-dimensional object once you kind of get it finished, because most of the time I'm working in the orthographic viewports. So let's go to the top view again, and let's go ahead and go to vertex mode, select the vertices, click on grid snap, and let's go ahead and snap these back in there. And let's go ahead and turn the grid snap off and try to get these lined up. Now what I can do is I'm going to select all these behind it, and I'm going to move it forward like that, so we get these nice cubes or squares all the way across. Okay, perfect. So this is what the cube would look like. Alright, so I'm going to turn the edge, the wireframe on so you guys can see it. So there we have it. Alright, so now we've got this piece completely finished. Now the only thing we need to do is mirror that over. Again, I'm going to go ahead and delete by type history, freeze transformations, and then we're going to go into the mesh, into the mirror tool option box, and it should be set at X and negative direction. Everything else is good. Even if I went in here and reset everything, it would give us X and negative, so resetting will give us what we want. Click on mirror, and there's our box. Perfect. Alright, cool. So we've got a smaller box without all that other detail in there. Okay, so there's our other asset. Now one thing I want to check though is where it welded over. Again, I'm just kind of used to doing this. I'm going to click on that vertex right there, Marquee Select it, and it gives me 1 vertex in that. So that works really good. So I'm going to go in here, selection mode, hit the 3 key. Okay, that gives a smooth shade. Let's go ahead and turn off the wireframe and just kind of rotate around, make sure you don't see any pinching or anything in the model. That looks great. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is that you're going to want to duplicate this object again, duplicate the object again for the high poly. So this is our medium poly. So small box, I probably should put this in, let's go ahead and duplicate it. Control D and put it in a layer. Double click on the layer and rename it small box medium poly. So SM MED poly. And let's put box in there too as well since I said it. There we go. Small box medium poly. Click on save and click that off. Right, so this object here will be the high poly. So now I'm going to go in here, hold down the space bar, go to mesh, and we're going to go to smooth, and we're going to smooth it at 2. Smooth that. There we go. So this is my high poly. I'm going to go ahead and select, click on a new layer. Now you can see that I've got subdivisions. I want to get rid of the history there, so click on history, delete by type history, and you can see that now I've got a high poly small box. So I'm going to create a new layer with that selected, create a new layer, double click on that layer, and call this SM box high poly. Here we go. So there's my high poly. There's my medium poly. Let's go ahead and turn on edge loops here so we can see, or the wireframe. Turn on wireframe so we can see it. And there's the high poly. There's the medium poly. So the high poly would be the box that we would send to Mudbox and add detail to it. Okay. And then we've got the medium poly that we will need to clean up the edge loops. Okay, so we'll be doing that in the next video. So we'll clean this up, and then we'll be finished. Then you'll have your medium poly, high poly, and your low poly, and you'll be turning in your high poly and your low poly. All right, and in the next video we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up.